The night was cold, and the stars above the ruined village gave no warmth. A human traveler named Daniel walked carefully through the broken path, his boots crunching on the burned soil. He had seen destruction before, but tonight felt different. Darker, heavier, the silence was too deep, as if even the wind was afraid to breathe. Then he heard it, a soft sob. So faint that at first he thought it was the cry of the wind, but it came again, a trembling, broken sound. The voice of a child. Daniel followed the sound, his heart beating faster, and there, among the ruins of a broken hut, he saw her, a little alien girl, small and fragile, sitting on the cold ground with a thin blanket wrapped around her shoulders. Her skin glowed faintly under the starlight, her eyes large and wet with tears. She looked no older than 7 or 8. Yet her face carried the weight of someone who had seen too much pain. When she noticed Daniel, she did not run, she did not scream. She only whispered with a voice so soft he almost didn't hear it, "Please, be my dad and my mom's husband." The words froze Daniel where he stood. He blinked. Sure, he had misheard her. "What did you say?" he asked gently. Stepping closer, the child hugged her blanket tighter and repeated, her voice shaking, "Be my dad, please, and my mom's husband." Daniel felt his chest tighten. He had heard many strange things in his life, but never such a request. Why would a child ask this of a stranger? Why a human, when surely she had her own people? His instincts told him to be cautious, yet something in her eyes, something raw, desperate and innocent, made him kneel beside her. "What happened to your father?" he asked softly. The little girl shook her head, fresh tears rolling down her cheeks. "Gone," she whispered. "They left us, all of them. No one wanted us anymore. Not me, not my mom." Her voice broke at the last word, as if even speaking of her mother hurt her deeply. Daniel wanted to ask more, but he stopped. The way she was shivering told him enough. She was cold, hungry, and scared. Carefully, he took off his cloak and draped it over her small shoulders. The girl flinched at first, but then relaxed when she felt the warmth. "Where is your mother now?" He asked. The child's eyes lit up with a flicker of hope. "She is alive, but she is hurt. She cannot walk. She told me to hide. She told me to stay alive, but I cannot, not without help." Her little hands grabbed his arm with surprising strength. "Please, only a human can save her now." Daniel frowned, confused by her words. Why only a human? What had her people done, or failed to do? Before he could ask, she tugged at him, trying to pull him toward the forest beyond the ruins. Her tiny body shook with urgency. "Come, please, she needs you." He hesitated, his mind racing. This could be a trap, some cruel trick, but when? He looked into her trembling eyes. He saw no lies, only desperation, and so, against his better judgment, he nodded. "All right, take me to her."
Oh.
The girl almost collapsed with relief. She held his hand tightly, guiding him through the shadows of the night as they walked. Daniel noticed the land bore scars of war, broken walls, scorched earth, abandoned fires. This place had seen violence, and whoever had lived here was either gone or had turned their back on the weak. The girl kept glancing at him, her lips moving as if whispering to herself. Sometimes Daniel caught words, "Dad, safe. Home," like she was trying to convince herself he was real. It struck him how lonely she must have been. How much courage it had taken just to speak those words to a stranger. Finally, they reached the edge of the forest. The air colder and heavy with silence. The girl pointed ahead. "She is there, in the cave." Daniel squinted and saw a faint light flickering from deep within the rocks. He tightened his grip on his staff, ready for anything. But before he could step inside, the little girl tugged his sleeve again, her eyes wide and shimmering with hope. Looked straight into his. "Promise me," she whispered. "Promise you." Will not leave us like the others." Daniel felt a weight settle on his shoulders, heavier than any burden he had carried before. He did not know this child. He did not know her mother. And yet something about this moment felt unshakable. He placed his hand gently over hers, and though he did not fully understand why, he said the words, "Anyway, I promise." The girl smiled. Through her tears, the first real smile he had seen on her face, and together, they stepped into the darkness of the cave, not knowing that this night would change all of their lives forever. The cave was damp and cold, its walls dripping with water that echoed like whispers in the night. Daniel held the child's hand tightly. Guiding her as they moved deeper inside, the little girl's steps were light, but urgent, as if she had walked this path many times before. Her small fingers trembled, but her voice carried hope. "This way, she is waiting." A faint glow of fire came into view, weak and flickering, hardly enough to chase away the shadows beside the dying flames. Lying against the rock wall was the figure of a woman. Her body was thin, her clothes torn, and her breathing shallow. Even from a distance, Daniel could see she was in pain, her chest rising and falling with effort. The girl rushed forward, dropping the blanket from her shoulders as she knelt beside the woman. "Mom, I brought him. I brought the human," she whispered eagerly. The woman stirred, her eyes opening slowly. Tired but sharp, when she saw Daniel, her expression hardened, her lips pulling back in a faint snarl. "You brought a stranger here." Her voice was weak, but sharp like a blade. The little girl clung to her mother's arm. "He is not just anyone, Mom. He will help us. He will help you." The woman shook her head, pushing the child gently aside. "Humans cannot help us. No one can." Daniel knelt down a short distance away, his voice calm. "I'm not here to harm you. I only followed because your daughter begged me to." The woman's eyes narrowed, her gaze full of suspicion. Her skin bore strange marks, bruises, and deep cuts that looked old yet unhealed. It was clear she had been left to die, abandoned by her own kind. The child pressed herself against her mother, her voice breaking. "Please, don't send him away. Mom, he is all we have." For a long moment, silence filled the cave, broken only by the sound of dripping water. Finally, the woman exhaled, closing her eyes, her strength fading. "You should not be here. Human, if my people find you, they will kill you." Daniel's jaw tightened, but he spoke firmly. "Then let them try, but I won't leave a child and her mother to die in the dark." The girl's eyes widened with relief, while her mother's expression softened just slightly. She turned her face away, hiding emotions she did not want him to see. Her pride fought against her weakness, but her body betrayed her, trembling, feverish, broken. Daniel took a step closer, noticing her leg bent at an unnatural angle, swollen and bruised. It looked like it had been broken days ago, left untreated. "You cannot walk, can you?" he asked quietly. The woman flinched, but did not answer, which was answer enough. He knelt and opened his pack, pulling out bandages and a flask of clean water. The girl's eyes shone with hope. "You see, Mom, he can help. He has medicine." The woman gave no reply, but she did not push him away this time. Her silence was permission enough. Daniel worked carefully, pouring water over her wounds, wrapping her leg, trying to ease her pain. She hissed in discomfort, but bore it without a word. Her pride refusing to show weakness, her daughter held her hand tightly, whispering comfort. "It's okay, Mom. It's okay." For the first time, Daniel saw a flicker of vulnerability in the woman's eyes, not for herself, but for her child. When the bandaging was done, Daniel sat back, his muscles tired. "This won't heal fast, but it will keep infection away." The woman looked at him, her lips pressed tightly together. Finally, she spoke, her voice low. "Why? Why would a human help us? Do you know what they call us out there? Worthless, broken, unwanted. Daniel met her gaze without flinching. "I don't care what they call you. I only see a mother trying to protect her child." Her breath caught at his words, and she turned her head quickly. Hiding the tears forming in her eyes, the little girl beamed and clung to Daniel's arm. "See, Mom, I told you, he is different. He is not like the others." The woman's silence was heavy, but not hostile anymore. It was the silence of someone caught between fear and hope. Suddenly, a sound echoed from outside the cave, the snap of a branch. The shuffle of footsteps. Daniel stiffened, his hand moving to the knife at his side. The girl gasped and held her mother tightly. "They're coming, the hunters." Her mother's eyes widened in fear. "You must go, human. If they find you here, they will kill you, and they will take her away." Daniel's voice was steady, but his eyes burned with resolve. "I told you, I will not leave you." The woman tried to protest, but the girl clung to him desperately, tears spilling down her face. "Please, Dad, don't go. Please stay with us," she begged, the word Dad leaving her lips without hesitation. The cave fell silent, her voice echoing in Daniel's chest like a promise. The footsteps outside grew louder, closer, shadows moving at the cave's entrance. Daniel gripped his knife, his body ready, his heart steady. The woman whispered, almost against her will, "Why do you risk yourself for us?" And Daniel, staring into the darkness ahead, answered without turning, "Because no one else will." The firelight flickered against the walls. The child held tightly between them, and the sound of danger crept ever closer for the first time. The mother did not tell him to leave. She only reached out and held her daughter close, her shadow falling across them both. And in that moment, Daniel knew he was no longer just a stranger in their lives. He was already becoming part of their fight to survive. The cave grew darker as the fire slowly died, its light shrinking into thin shadows. Daniel sat quietly near the entrance, listening to every sound outside, his knife still in his hand. The child had finally fallen asleep between them, her small body curled close to her mother's side, but the mother's eyes stayed open. Sharp, tired, and untrusting, she studied the human for a long time, her gaze heavy with questions she did not speak. Finally, she broke the silence, her voice low. "Why are you still here, human? You should have left when you had the chance." Daniel met her eyes calmly. "Because your daughter begged me not to. And because leaving you like this would make me less than human." Her lips pressed together tightly. The answer? Not what she expected. Her body was weak, her leg wrapped in his bandages, but her spirit still held fire. "I don't need your pity," she said bitterly, turning her face away. Daniel shook his head. "This isn't pity, it's survival. You can't walk, you can't fight. Without me, both of you won't last the night." Her silence was sharp, but she could not deny the truth. The child stirred in her sleep, whispering faintly, "Dad, don't go." Her tiny fingers gripped Daniel's sleeve even as she dreamed. The mother's chest tightened at the sound, her face twisting with conflict. "Stop letting her call you that," she hissed softly. "She doesn't understand what she says. She's only a child." Daniel looked at the sleeping girl, then back at her mother. "Maybe she understands more than we think," he replied quietly. Her eyes widened slightly, a flash of pain crossing her face for a moment. She looked less like a warrior, less like a proud woman, and more like someone who had carried too much sorrow for too long. She leaned back against the cold stone, her breathing uneven. "My people left us because I refused to obey," she whispered bitterly. "They said I was weak. They said my child was a burden. We were cast out, left to die." Daniel felt anger burn inside him, but he kept his voice calm. "And yet, here you are, still alive, still protecting her. That is not weakness." Her eyes shone with unshed tears, though. She quickly turned her face away. The child's presence between them softened the tension. Daniel saw the way the mother held her daughter close. Even in her pain, even in her pride, every breath she took was for the child. Every ounce of strength she had left was spent on keeping her safe. It was not weakness, it was love, the kind of love that endures even when the world turns against you. The mother broke the silence again, her voice trembling. "And what of you, human? Why risk your life for strangers? You owe us nothing." Daniel's jaw tightened. Memories flickering in his mind, faces he had failed to save, promises broken by war. "I owe a debt to the helpless," he said quietly, "and I swore I'd never turn my back again." She stared at him, her guarded expression softening for the first time. Then came the sound again, faint movement outside the cave. Daniel rose quickly, knife in hand, his body tense. The mother pulled the child closer, whispering sharply, "If they find you, they will kill you first. They hate humans more than they hate me." Daniel gave her a grim smile. "Then they'll learn I don't fall so easily." Moments passed, and the sound faded, leaving only silence again. He lowered the blade, but his body stayed alert. Ready for anything, the mother watched him closely. Studying the way he stood between the danger and her child, something inside her shifted. An old wall of mistrust beginning to crack. "You're reckless," she murmured. "But she trusts you." Daniel met her eyes firmly. "Do you?" The question caught her off guard, her lips parting, but no words coming out. Her silence was more telling than any answer. The girl stirred again, waking this time, her sleepy eyes looking up at both of them. "Mom," she whispered. He stayed. He didn't leave. Her mother smoothed her hair gently, her voice softer than before. Yes, he stayed. The child smiled weakly and clutched both their hands. "Then, we're safe now." Daniel felt her tiny hand wrap around his fingers. Fragile, but full of trust, he looked at the mother, who tried to pull her hand away but found herself caught in the same grip. The three of them sat connected, the fire's dim glow painting their shadows on the cave wall. It was the shadow of something new, something fragile, something unspoken, but undeniably real. The mother closed her eyes, exhaustion pulling at her. "Don't mistake this for acceptance, human," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "But for tonight." "Stay," Daniel nodded, his voice steady. "I will." And though her words were sharp, he saw the truth in her trembling hands. She did not want him to leave. The night dragged on, long and heavy, but within the darkness of that cave, a fragile bond began to take shape. It was born not from trust, not yet, but from necessity, from survival, and from the innocent wish of a child who refused to give up on family. And as Daniel kept watch through the silence, he realized that the broken mother beside him was not as unbreakable as she wanted to seem. She was strong, yes, but she was also human in her own way, carrying scars that no one else could see. For the first time, Daniel wondered if maybe he had not just stumbled into their lives by chance. Maybe he was meant to be here. In this cave, with this child, and with this broken mother who still had fire in her eyes, the shadows stretched long on the walls, but among them, something new was forming. Not just survival, not just protection, but the first fragile shape of a family. The morning came slowly, pale light crawling into the cave and chasing away the shadows. Daniel had not slept, his eyes sharp, always listening, always waiting for danger. The child stirred first, blinking up at him with a small smile. "You didn't leave," she whispered. Daniel shook his head gently. "No, I promised I wouldn't." Her mother woke next, her body stiff and weak, but her spirit still sharp. Her eyes landed on Daniel and lingered for a moment before turning away. She hated to admit it, but the human had kept them safe through the night. Even she could not ignore that. The child, full of morning energy, despite hunger, began to chatter softly. She tugged at Daniel's sleeve, pointing at the trees outside. "Food? We need food. Please." Daniel nodded and stood, his body tired. "But strong, stay here. I'll find something." The mother's voice cut sharply. "If you go, they'll find you. The hunters are close." Daniel looked at her calmly. "And if I don't, your child starves." The words silenced her, though her eyes burned with frustration. She wanted to protect her daughter herself, but her broken body betrayed her. The girl touched her mother's hand gently. "He will come back. Mom, I know he will." Daniel left the cave, every step cautious, his knife ready. The forest was alive with sounds. Birds crying, branches swaying, but underneath it all, he felt the tension of unseen eyes. He moved quickly, gathering roots, berries, and even managing to trap a small creature. By the time he returned, his pack was full. Though scratches on his arms told the story of close encounters, the child's face lit up when she saw him. Running to hug his leg, "You came back. I told you, Mom." Her mother's eyes softened despite herself, relief flashing before she hid it again. Daniel cooked what he had found, sharing the food equally. Making sure the child ate first, the simple act made the girl beam. As if he had given her a feast fit for a queen. They ate together in silence. Three strangers, sitting close like they had always belonged, but outside the cave, whispers carried in the wind. Shadows moved between the trees. The mother's voice was tense as she leaned closer. "They know we are here. It's only a matter of time." Daniel's jaw tightened. "Then we'll be ready." Over the next days, they traveled carefully. Leaving the cave behind, the mother leaned on Daniel's shoulder when her leg failed her, though pride made her keep her distance whenever she could. The child, however, stayed close to him, always, her small hand slipping into his whenever fear crept near. She called him Dad without hesitation, and each time, Daniel felt both warmth and a strange ache in his chest. The mother watched this with guarded eyes, torn between anger and something she could not name. More than once, she whispered to him in the dark, "Don't encourage her. She'll only be hurt when you leave." And every time, Daniel answered the same, "I'm not leaving." Her silence after those words grew longer with each night. They moved through abandoned villages, places haunted by silence and memories. Sometimes the child would ask, "Why did they leave us?" But neither Daniel nor her mother could answer. The girl clung to Daniel's side, as if afraid he too would vanish if she let go, and each time, Daniel would pat her head gently and say, "I'm here," but danger never stayed far. One night, as they camped under the stars, shadows appeared at the edge of the firelight, figures cloaked in dark cloth, eyes gleaming with hatred. The hunters had found them. The mother tensed, pulling her daughter behind her, but her injured leg gave way, and she fell. Daniel stepped forward instantly, his knife in his hand, his stance steady. The hunters laughed bitterly. A human? Protecting them? How pathetic. Daniel's eyes burned with fury. "Call me pathetic again, but you'll never touch them." The child clung to her mother, whispering, "Dad will win. I know he will." The fight was brutal, blades clashing, fists striking. Daniel fought with everything he had, scars burning, muscles screaming. But his determination stronger than pain. The hunters underestimated him, thinking a lone human was weak, but one by one, they fell back, bloodied and broken by his rage. At last, silence returned. Broken only by Daniel's heavy breathing, the hunters fled into the trees, leaving behind their threats. "This isn't over. Human, we'll be back." Daniel stood tall, despite his wounds, his chest heaving. When he turned, the child was already running to him, hugging his waist tightly. "You saved us," she cried, tears streaming down her face. Her mother looked at him, her eyes wide, her walls of suspicion cracking. Once more. She opened her mouth, but no words came, only silence, heavy with meaning. Daniel met her gaze and said simply, "I told you, I'm not leaving." That night, as they rested again, the child slept soundly between them. Her mother, however, lay awake, staring at the stars, her thoughts heavy. This human had bled for them, fought for them, stayed for them. And though she did not want to admit it, a strange thought whispered in her heart. Perhaps he was no longer just a stranger, for in the quiet of the night, they were no longer. Three broken souls wandering alone, they were something else. Something fragile, something forming, a family of strangers bound not by blood, but by choice, by need, and by love, slowly taking root in the cracks of despair. The days that followed were uneasy. Daniel, the mother, and the child moved carefully from one hiding place to another. Though the hunters had been driven back, their threats lingered like smoke in the air. The mother warned him constantly, "They will not stop, they want us erased." And she was right. One morning, as the sun rose red over the forest, they were surrounded. Armed warriors stepped from the trees, their spears gleaming, their eyes full of cold hatred. Daniel stood in front of the mother and child, his knife ready, but this time they did not attack. Instead, their leader raised his hand. "Bring them to the council. Let the elders decide their fate." The mother's face paled, her body stiff with fear. Her daughter clung to Daniel's arm, whispering, "Don't let them take us." Daniel squeezed her hand gently, his jaw set. "We'll face them together," he said, his voice steady. The march to the council was long and heavy, the villagers staring with open disgust as they passed. Whispers filled the air. The broken mother, the cursed child. And then sharper whispers, and a human at the center of the village. Stood the great hall, a place built of stone and fire. Inside, the elders sat on high seats. Their eyes full of judgment, the mother lowered her head, shame burning in her eyes. The child clung tighter to Daniel, refusing to let go. The eldest elder's voice was sharp. "You return to us, not in strength, but dragging shame with you, a human at your side." The council laughed bitterly, the sound echoing through the hall. One elder sneered, "Your child begs for a father, and you bring this?" A stranger, a human. The mother trembled, unable to speak, her pride breaking under their scorn. But Daniel stepped forward, his voice like iron. "Say what you want of me, but don't call her childless. Don't call this girl unwanted. I stand with them, and I won't step aside." The room erupted in outrage, voices shouting, "Arrogant human! He has no place here." The eldest elder raised his hand for silence, his eyes narrowing. "If you claim to stand with them, then prove it. Human, prove you are more than words." Daniel's body tensed. "How?" The elder's lips curved into a cruel smile. "By fire, by trial, the way of our people." The council roared in approval, the crowd outside chanting, "Trial of fire, trial of fire." The mother gasped, her hand reaching toward Daniel. "No, you'll be killed. You can't win against them." Daniel looked at her calmly, his voice steady. "I've survived worse." The child's small hands clutched at him, her eyes wide with terror. "Please, Dad, don't go." Daniel knelt, pressing her tiny hands between his own. "I have two, little one, for you, for your mother, for all of us." Tears filled her eyes, but she nodded, whispering, "I believe in you." The trial ground was set before nightfall, a great circle of stone, fires burning around its edge, warriors and villagers gathering to watch. The trial was simple. Survive, fight, endure, prove your worth, or die. The mother's heart pounded as she sat with her daughter, watching from the edge. Daniel stood tall in the circle, his knife in hand, his body tense but unshaken, opposite him. Three chosen warriors stepped forward, each armed, each stronger. And faster than most men, the crowd jeered. "He will fall. He is nothing. The human dies tonight." But the child's voice rang out, small but fierce. "No, my dad will win." The signal was given, and the warriors rushed him. Daniel moved fast, dodging the first blow, his knife flashing. Pain seared across his arm as another blade struck him, but he did not stop. He fought with everything in him, scars, old and new, burning. Muscles screaming, the fire around the circle roared higher, casting long shadows across his face. The crowd's laughter turned to shock as one warrior fell. Blood staining the stone, Daniel staggered but stayed on his feet. His chest heaving, his will unbroken. Another warrior lunged, but Daniel twisted, slamming his knife into the ground and driving his fist into the warrior's throat. The last fighter struck hard, sending Daniel crashing to the ground. The mother cried out, trying to rise, but collapsing again. Her injured leg useless, the child sobbed, reaching out though she could not cross the fire. Daniel lay there, bleeding, his vision darkening. But then he heard her voice, trembling, desperate. "Please, Dad, get up, don't leave us." And something inside him roared to life with a cry that shook the silence. Daniel pushed himself up, staggering, his body broken but his spirit unyielding. The last warrior rushed again, but Daniel met him head-on, slamming his shoulder into the warrior's chest, driving him into the flames. The crowd gasped, silence falling over the circle. Daniel stood, bloodied, shaking, but alive. The fire burned behind him, his shadow stretching tall and unbroken. The elders stared in shock, their mocking smiles gone. The eldest elder finally spoke, his voice grudgingly heavy. "You have passed, human, against all odds. You live, you endure. The trial is yours." The crowd murmured in disbelief, whispers rippling like waves. The mother's eyes filled with tears, her heart breaking open. The child's voice carried through the silence, proud and fierce. "I told you, my dad would win." Daniel dropped to his knees, his knife falling from his hand. He turned toward the mother and child, his voice weak but steady. "I did not fight for honor, not for pride. I fought for you." And as the fires burned high, everyone saw the truth. This human had bled not for himself, but for the family he had chosen. The fires of the trial still burned as Daniel knelt in the circle, his body trembling from blood loss. The crowd whispered among themselves, unable to believe what they had seen. A human, a stranger, had survived the trial of fire. Something even their own strongest warriors often failed. The child broke free from her mother's grasp, running across the stone ground, her tiny feet carrying her to Daniel's side. She threw her arms around him, her small voice trembling but fierce. "You did it, Dad, you did it." Daniel's arms shook as he held her, his voice rough but steady. "I promised I wouldn't leave you." The mother slowly limped forward, her legs still weak, her heart beating fast with emotions she had tried to bury. When she reached them, her eyes met Daniel's, and for the first time, she could not look away. The eldest elder rose, his voice carrying across the hall. "You proved yourself, human. You fought not with skill alone, but with fire in your heart. Yet the trial is not only for survival, it is for choice, for truth." Daniel lifted his head, sweat and blood dripping down his face. "Then speak your truth. What do you want from me?" The elder's eyes glinted. "You fought for them, but will you stay for them? Will you claim them, even knowing the weight it brings?" The hall grew silent, every ear listening, every eye watching. The mother's chest tightened, her pride and her fear clashing like two storms inside her. She wanted to push him away, to keep her walls strong, but her daughter's hand clutched both of theirs together. The child's voice was small but clear. "Please, don't go. Be my dad, be my mom's husband. We need you." The words rang louder than any chant of the crowd, louder than the crackle of the fires. Daniel looked at the child, then at her mother. His voice was low, but filled with steady strength. "I never wanted glory, never wanted power. I only wanted to keep you safe. If that means being father, if that means being husband, then yes, I'll stay." Gasps rippled through the crowd, whispers rising. "He accepts." The human accepts. The mother's lips trembled, her heart breaking open in ways she had sworn never to allow again. She turned to the council, her voice strong despite her shaking body. "You call us broken, unwanted, but look, even a stranger bleeds for us when our own people cast us aside. You ask me to choose, and I choose him." The hall shook with uproar, voices raised in anger, disbelief, and shock. But above it all, the child's smile shone like light in the darkness. Her dream slowly becoming reality. Daniel reached out, his hand trembling but steady, and the mother, with tears in her eyes, placed her hand in his. The eldest elder stood, his face unreadable. "So it is done. A bond formed not by our traditions, but by fire, by choice. Let it be recorded. The human stands as their protector." Their family, some in the crowd shouted in rage, others turned away in silence, but no one dared challenge the decision. The trial had been witnessed, the fire had spoken, and the bond could not be denied. The mother leaned into Daniel's side for support, not just for her injured body, but for the weight of the moment later. As night fell and the village quieted, Daniel sat with the mother and child outside the hall. The child leaned against his chest, humming softly, while the mother stared at the stars above, her eyes wet. "You're a fool," she whispered to him. "You've tied yourself to us now, and you don't even know what storms will come." Daniel smiled faintly, his arm around them both. "Maybe, but some storms are worth facing." The child looked between them, her voice gentle but certain. "Then we're a family now, right?" The mother froze, the word echoing in her heart like a wound and a healing at once. Daniel met the child's eyes and said softly, "Yes, we're a family." And though the mother did not speak, her silence was not rejection. It was the silence of someone who had finally stopped fighting what her heart already knew. But shadows still lingered. Beyond the firelight, the hunters who had fled watched from the distance, their eyes filled with hate. One of them whispered, "This is not the end. The human thinks he has one, but we will break him, and we will take them back." The storm the mother had feared was indeed coming, but for now, under the stars, they were together. Daniel closed his eyes, exhaustion pulling him down. But he felt the warmth of the child against him, the steady presence of the mother beside him. He realized that though he had bled and nearly died, he had gained something far greater. Not just survival, not just respect, but a place where he belonged. A choice made not out of duty, but out of love. The night grew quiet, the fire burning low, and in that silence, for the first time in years, the mother allowed herself to rest without fear. The child slept with a smile, safe in the arms of her chosen father, and Daniel kept his promise, holding them both, knowing that this was no longer just protection, but the beginning of a life they would share together. The village fires burned low. The trial, already a memory, whispered in every corner. But Daniel, the mother, and the child sat together outside the hall, their bond stronger than the council's judgment. For the first time since her exile, the mother felt a fragile kind of peace. Her daughter slept soundly against Daniel's chest, her small hand gripping his shirt as if afraid he might vanish. The mother watched them quietly, her heart torn between pride and fear. This human had bled for them, chosen them, stood against her people for them. And though her pride resisted, she could not deny what her daughter already believed. He was no longer a stranger. He was part of them, part of her. part of the fragile family she thought she would never have again. But peace never lasted long. At dawn, horns sounded through the forest. Hunters returned, stronger in number, their voices sharp with anger. "They dishonor us." One shouted, "A human cannot claim one of our own." The crowd stirred, fear and hatred mixing like fire and smoke. The elders tried to quiet them, but hatred had its own strength. Daniel rose, his hands steady on his knife, his body still weak from wounds but his spirit burning. He looked at the mother and child and spoke firmly. "I won't let them take you, no matter what happens." The mother's eyes filled with both fear and fierce resolve. "Then we face them together." The hunters stormed into the circle of the village, demanding blood. Their leader pointed at Daniel, his voice like thunder. "Give us the human, or all of you will pay." The crowd fell silent, waiting for the elder's decision. But the eldest elder stood, his voice sharp. He passed the trial, he earned his place. "You cannot deny the fire." The hunters roared in rage. Charging forward, chaos broke out. Warriors clashing, villagers screaming, fire spreading. Daniel fought with desperate strength. Every strike fueled by love and fury. The mother, even with her injured leg, took up a staff and stood beside him, her eyes blazing. The child hid behind them, crying out, "Please don't take my family away." Her voice carried through the smoke and noise, stronger than any weapon. Some villagers faltered, their hatred wavering at the sound of her cry, even among anger. The innocence of a child broke through like light in darkness. Daniel struck down the hunters one by one, but his body was breaking, his wounds deep. The mother shielded the child, striking fiercely at any who came near. At last, the hunters, bloodied and beaten, fled into the forest, swearing revenge. The battle was over, but the cost weighed heavy in the air. The mother turned to Daniel, her breath sharp, her eyes full of fear. "You'll kill yourself for us," she whispered. "Why? Why throw away your life for two outcasts?" Daniel met her gaze, his voice rough but steady. "Because you're not outcasts to me. You're my family. And family is worth everything." The words broke her last wall, her tears falling freely. As she reached for him, the child pressed their hands together, her voice full of joy. "Then it's true. We're a family now." And in that moment, the mother finally allowed herself to smile. A real smile, the first in years. The elders stepped forward, their eyes solemn. "You have fought with fire. You have bled with honor. And you have chosen each other. Let it be known, this is no longer weakness. This is strength." The villagers bowed their heads, some still bitter, but none dared challenge what had been proven in fire and blood. Days turned into weeks. Daniel built a small home with his hands at the edge of the forest. The mother, though still healing, tended to the fire and taught her daughter the songs of her people. The child laughed again, her voice echoing through the trees. No longer filled with sorrow, but with hope, Daniel hunted food, repaired tools, and told stories by the fire. The mother listened, sometimes smiling, sometimes hiding her tears, and slowly, without realizing it, she leaned into him, trusting him more with each day. The child, always beaming, would snuggle between them, whispering, "This is what family feels like." One night, under a sky full of stars, the mother finally spoke the words she had buried. "You are not just protector, not just stranger. You are husband," she whispered softly. Daniel looked at her, surprised but moved, his hand finding hers. "And you are not just burden. You are everything." The child, half asleep, smiled through her dreams, knowing her wish had come true. The story spread beyond the village, carried by whispers and songs. They said a human came where no one else would, stood where no one else dared. They said he bled for love, and from that love, a family was born. Not from bloodlines, not from tradition, but from courage. trust. And the whisper of a child who refused to let go. And so, under the endless stars, their lives intertwined. The mother no longer broken. The child no longer alone. The human no longer wandering without purpose. Together they built something stronger than fear. Stronger than exile, stronger than hate. A family, fragile but real, born from a whisper in the dark and sealed in fire.